Hello guys, and welcome back all 2,100 members of this channel. In what is, I would call, breaking news, Sergio Perez has managed to keep his seat. And yeah, I am kind of laughing because, to be perfectly honest with you, I did not predict him keeping his seat. There are just other drivers, I would think, that Red Bull, who have proven themselves to be, in the past at least, the purest form of a meritocracy in terms of drivers getting position. They've proved themselves to be the team that if you are faster, you will be favored. And if you are faster, you will keep your seat in a very ruthless, cutthroat manner. Obviously, they've had some pushback for that over the past. But counter to that, Sergio Perez has kept his seat. And I do say counter to that because Sergio Perez, in 2021, he cost them the constructors, but he managed to get Max the title, which was worth a lot to them back then. In 2022, he nearly got beaten by Charles when Charles was in an inferior car. In 2023, he nearly got beat by Lewis when Lewis was in a far superior car. And then this year, he started off well, no doubt about it. He did start off well, but he seems to have taken his yearly dip midway through the season in which he can't even get himself into Q3. And obviously, we're going to talk about the other players and how this affects Sainz, how this affects Daniel, how this affects Yuki. But just on Sergio for this moment, I need to know what Sergio has on Christian Horner. What dirt does he have on this man? Because there is no way that Red Bull looked at this and went, yep, on ability, Sergio deserves to keep his seat. Obviously, we know Sergio has a lot of commercial help or a lot of commercial leverage in the Americas, and he actually outsells Max Verstappen. So there is definitely a money factor in terms of losing a Sergio Perez. But I would never think that Red Bull would be strapped for cash. So I'm not sure how much of a factor that even plays. I would really think, especially when you get to like the big teams, the Mercedes, the McLarens, the Ferraris, the Red Bulls, that it's no longer about who brings the finances. It's really about who can get you the right results. And Sergio Perez, at the very least this season, has shown to be definitely up and down. In the first few races, he did okay. But as soon as that Red Bull started to become a lot more competitive to other cars, as soon as that Red Bull started to be, well, to be honest, it's not even the Red Bull. As soon as the car was close enough to the rest of the pack to which they can somewhat challenge Max Verstappen, it was curtains for him. In Miami, when Max was trying to chase down Norris, Sergio nearly got overtaken by Lewis in that struggling Mercedes. To tell you a story of it, obviously we know what happened in Monaco, that horror show, and in Imola, it wasn't too much better either. So it hasn't really been the best few races for Sergio Perez, and maybe he's going to pick it up. Maybe this is his security check so that he can pick up his performances. But I don't get it. I will be honest. Like, I would really want to be supportive of Perez, but I don't get it. When you have drivers like Yuki on the side, what is the point of that smaller RB team if no matter how good you perform, it just doesn't matter? Is it because the Honda deal is gonna erupt in a couple of years or by the end of the season that they've decided, we can't take a risk on Yuki financially? Is that the reason? Maybe if Honda was staying, Yuki would get a chance. Obviously, we're going to talk about Yuki later. But even Carlos Sainz, I don't imagine Carlos Sainz was being overly stingy in terms of what he might have been negotiating with Red Bull. But for some reason, they've managed to go with Sergio Perez. Even if they didn't want to go in a different direction to Yuki, Sainz would have been a more stable, long-term option that's consistent and has been shown, at least in his Ferrari time and his McLaren time, to be able to work within a team and be able to play the team player role when he isn't involved in the championship. So that is exactly what Red Bull want. They don't want someone that's going to challenge Max. They want someone that's going to help out Max, but be close enough. But Sergio hasn't even managed to do that. He's always consistently so far behind. I can't remember the last time Sergio, for like 5 races in a row, was close to Max and really helping him whilst that car was competitive. It's either been Max is 30 seconds ahead and doesn't need any help, or Max is close enough to, have to think about things when he's driving or have to think about other drivers and the strategy. And Sergio Perez is dwindling it down in whatever, P12, P8, P10, barely able to help his teammate. And speaking of Sainz, this must be, I don't know if Sainz maybe knew this beforehand, but if he is learning this the same way we are learning this and he was negotiating with Red Bull, this must have been a catastrophic blow to Sainz. I'm sure he must have been hoping for some sort of, even if it was semi-permanent deal with Red Bull, because now he's put himself in a bit of an awkward situation, or rather, he's landed himself in a pretty awkward situation. Obviously, he didn't put himself in this situation, Ferrari did. But that Mercedes C is probably the highest car performance he will get if he wants to sign somewhere next year. But we all know that that seat is indirectly reserved for Kimi Antonelli. So whatever contract he does get won't be a long-standing one. But if he does decide to stick or twist and go to Sauber, he knows he's going to be dwindling at the back of the grid next year, which I'm sure he just doesn't want to do. On the other hand, if he doesn't go to Sauber and they do get a good lineup, you never know. They might just not want to change it. They might have moved on in 2026 when Audi come about and not want Sainz anymore. So he really is in a tough situation. It really does suck to be Carlos Sainz. In my opinion, I do think he should take the Mercedes deal. Take the Mercedes deal, perform really well, keep your stock as high as possible, and then in 2026, make that move to Audi. Because the last thing you want to do is have a bad season in 2026, or in 2025 have a bad season, and your stock price has gone down and people value what you can bring to the table. Look at Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas is a quality driver, but because of the performance of that Sauber and not being able to do anything with it, well, if you ask anyone now what you think of Valtteri Bottas, I'm sure they will be saying things like he's dipped so far down since his Mercedes days, when really, I'm sure that car is a handful to drive for him and for Zhou. But probably even bigger than Sainz, now that I start thinking about it, is the RB boys. Because those Visa Cash App, Weatherspoon, Sugar-Free RB boys, whatever you want to call them, the AlphaTauris, both of those drivers, as much as they were competing to beat each other, let's be honest, the only reason we cared about Daniel versus Yuki was in relation to that Red Bull seat. Without the Red Bull seat being open, why is Daniel still in the sport instead of Lawson? There literally is no reason now. He doesn't outperform Yuki consistently, and Yuki is about a decade younger. He's just as old as Sergio Perez and getting older. He's not getting any faster. This isn't any hate from me to Daniel. I'm just saying it how it is. Daniel was here to get that Red Bull seat. We all knew it. Anyone who ever spoke about Daniel Ricciardo was saying, well, whenever he performed well, this would look good for Christian Horner, And I did expect Christian Horner to give Daniel a little bit more time, but maybe some sort of internal struggle has forced Christian Horner to say, you know what, I'm going to keep the man that has been rooting for me, which is Sergio Perez. Obviously, Daniel hasn't exactly been against him, but Sergio Perez has been a very outright supporter of Christian Horner throughout this time. So where does Daniel go from here? Because is he just going to, lounge about in AlphaTauri till he gets replaced in a couple years? Is he happy just to be in the sixth best team on the grid? I can't imagine so. Liam Lawson's going to be knocking on that door for one of their seats. I do suppose Liam Lawson is going to take Yuki Tsunoda's seat for a reason I'm going to get to in a second. So is he going to just, is he just going to lounge around there? Liam Lawson comes and he's now having to compete against rookies in the sixth best team on the grid. And what does this say? What does this say about that Red Bull, that RB team? Because the whole point of that RB team, the whole point was that they get drivers in from that RB team. And I know that RB team is going to stop being a sister team of Red Bull in the future. I can't remember what year it was that they said they're going to try and cut the ties completely. But as a rule of thumb, as it is now, the team is pointless. Be honest with you, the team is pointless. They're racing for sixth place. They're never going to have, Williams are in a lower place in the constructors right now than RB. But in 10 years, if you had to ask me which team might be higher, well, we both know RB is capped because they can never be better than Red Bull. Well, they're not going to be allowed to be better than Red Bull. But a team like a Williams, which is independent for the most part, is allowed to be as good as they want. They can challenge for championships in 10 years. You never know that. So what is the point? Are they just racing just to go around the track? Are they racing just to get sixth place every year, fifth place every year? It doesn't make any sense anymore. Out of everyone in that team, I think Yuki is probably going to be most disappointed. For the past 2 years, he's dominated his opponents. This year, they brought in Daniel specifically to get that Red Bull seat, and he's absolutely dominated him. And the worst thing is that I'm sure if Daniel came in and dominated Yuki in the way that Yuki is dominating Daniel, I'm sure there'll be a lot more question marks over that seat, and I'm sure Christian Horner would have taken a lot more of a consideration in terms of Daniel Ricciardo getting that seat. But it almost felt like if Daniel didn't get the seat, none of those Visa Cash App guys were going to get the seat. Like, Yuki was never in the conversation to begin with, which personally I find kind of disrespectful, because there's no way you can tell me Christian Horner considered Yuki. On paper, there's literally no reason as to why Yuki shouldn't get that seat. Yuki is fully deserving of that seat. And I'm saying this so passionately because we don't know if Yuki's going to be in the sport in a couple of years. We know that the Honda deal is what is keeping him at RB or in that Red Bull Corporation right now. And Honda are going to be with Aston Martin in the future. But with Fernando Alonso signing a long-term contract and Stroll having an infinite contract, well, the chances of Yuki getting inside that team are slim. So this could be Yuki's last year in Formula One or second to last year in Formula One. Who knows? With Lawson coming in the sport, I'm sure Red Bull are going to want to freshen things up. And I doubt they're going to want to get rid of Ricciardo, because at the very least, he generates sales for that RB team. And I think this is really and truly a tale of how Formula One isn't a true meritocracy. It just isn't. It just isn't. Sometimes the better drivers don't get into the better teams. And sometimes the drivers that play the sides politically do get into the better teams. Sometimes the drivers that are more commercially viable are the ones that do get into the better teams. But to be honest, I'm just pretty disappointed for Yuki. Yuki has been in Formula One for ages. He's progressed so much. He's worked really hard. He's put in consistent performances. He's dragged that RB team up the standings. He is overtaken Stroll in the driver's standings. And still, we are facing a very large possibility he isn't going to get a seat in 2026. And I don't know how to explain how he doesn't get a seat. Like, if Yuki were to explain to his parents, why don't you have a seat in 2026? What does he say? I'm not marketable enough? Is that a reason? Is that a reason that we're going to go with? I'm just really disappointed. I'm disappointed that this is the way that Formula One has to be. I guess a way to resolve this would be to get more teams into the sport, but Formula One doesn't want to get more teams into the sport. They also don't want to increase the pot size in terms of how much money is split in the constructors. They're saying, if we get an 11th team or a 12th team, we're going to have to just split the pot more ways in terms of, how many million total, instead of just adding more money to the pot to be distributed out, which is typical Formula One selfishness. The same way Formula One has a duplicitous nature in which, we're in June, it's LGBTQ, it's Pride Month, you know it. Every team and their grandmother is posting their logo or their brand logo with rainbow colors. I'm sure they'll be promptly to take that down on July 1st. July 1st, they'll take down all of their pride flags, and they'll quickly forget about Pride Month once they go and race in Saudi Arabia, the true Formula One way. Only serve the things that suit you. Commercialism and freaking heck, bro. Formula One pisses me off sometimes. I wanted Yuki to, on a serious note, I wanted Yuki to get that seat so bad. Like, forget all this commentary. I wanted Yuki to get that seat so bad. I thought, if Yuki doesn't get this seat, meritocracy in Formula One is dead. It's no longer about who's doing well. It's no longer about that. It's no longer about who can actually deliver. It's all about money. It's all about money. You can't tell me off of performances alone that Sergio Perez is the person you want as a rear gunner, because the rear gunner's job is consistency. It's not even outright pace. It's consistency. And that's Sergio Perez's weakest aspect. It's his weakest aspect. He isn't there to beat Max Verstappen. He's not there because he has great qualifying pace. He's not there because he has great race pace. He's there to be consistent when Max Verstappen messes up. And what isn't he? He's not consistent. The same way Daniel Ricciardo isn't consistent. But they both have seats. And you know who's not going to have a seat? The man that would probably have beaten them both in a straight fight, Yuki Tsunoda. You know who doesn't have a seat right now? The man that will probably have beaten all three of them in a straight fight, Carlos Sainz. Why is it that Formula One is the one sport in which you can almost guarantee, play for play, the stupidity. I was literally in the shower. I was thinking about this. I was like, you know what? I saw Mercedes post something with the pride flags, and I went, huh? And I looked in the comments, and I went, oh, everyone was like, oh, I forgot it's Pride Month this month because Mercedes went over the top with it. And then I was like, wait a second. Mercedes are going to be very quick to delete every lick of a rainbow before we return to Qatar or Abu Dhabi. You won't hear a single lick of a rainbow there. When we go to Jeddah, tell Formula One to plaster rainbow flags in Jeddah. It won't go down. It's just that now in July, it's very marketable. It gives you good marketing points to have a lot of rainbows. The same way that Sergio Perez gives you lots of marketing points in the Americas. You know, he has the Americans snatched up, obviously as a South American snatched up. Mexico, we raced there. Basically, the whole race is for him. They can't stop talking about him the whole race. I just can't be asked sometimes. I don't get it. All I want is a meritocracy. I'm not even asking for equal cars. I don't want equal cars. All I want is a time in which teams have the platform to show what they can actually do. You know? Like Formula One has a thing that they almost try and fake like they're trying to. When I say Formula One, I mean like everyone from like the teams to the FIA to Liberty. They all fake like they're trying to create this environment that just isn't there. And it's so weird they're trying to create this environment because anyone who looks just a little bit deeper can see that Formula One as a group are a bunch of fraudsters. They're a bunch of frauds. You mean to tell me that they're more focused on changing the fuel and the tires the drivers use than the fact that they go to America and back like 3 different times during the season instead of doing 3 back-to-back races in America? The same thing with the Middle East. And they care about pollution. You mean to tell me they don't prioritize money over everything, but instead of adding to the pool to make sure that a team like Andretti could come in and things could still be competitive, you force teams like Williams to say, no, we don't want an 11th driver, because teams like Williams knows that if you put an 11th driver, all of a sudden, that constructor's money that you vitally need to improve your team is getting cut deeply because the FIA and Formula One are too stingy to increase the pool. It doesn't make sense. Why is it that we have to put up with this? Every single time there's something to do with Formula One, there is some sort of big politics behind it. I just want to see racing. I want to see the fastest cars, the fastest drivers go around good tracks with overtaking all day, every day. That's all I want. Maybe not every day. I can understand if there was 20. I could understand if there was 17 races. 2020 had like 17 races in the season. And those races slapped. I don't even care if it's dominated. Just give the fans what they want. Because this is all entertainment. Let's not act like we're all into this for different reasons. This is pure entertainment. And we want to be entertained the right way. Don't try and entertain us. And that's one of the reasons why I hate... This is a bit of a tangent. But this is one of the reasons why I hate sprint races. Because... it's like they understand we want things, but they can't give it to us without abusing other things. It's like you understand we want to see racing, but instead of improving, actual rule sets that will increase or make racing more interesting, maybe mandatory pit stops over one. I heard that, points lower down. You know what you do? You insert a sprint race. Why? Because we'll get more butts and seats and you can charge more for it on sprint weekends. You can charge more for it. Like it blows my mind every time there is something in F1 that can be linked back to some sort of political nonsense. Like, you don't have to do this in other sports. You don't have to do it. And Formula One could be so good. It could be so big, but it's changing so much for the worst. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to ramble. I'm not going to ramble for a minute. The point of this video is that Sergio Perez got a 2-year extension. I'm not sad about it. I am surprised that he did get the 2-year extension. I'm probably more surprised that they announced it now, right after his horrific Monaco Grand Prix. I think maybe they should have announced it after he had like a better weekend. We're going into a triple header. But then again, we're going into a triple header. So there's a good possibility he could go 3 bad races on the bounce, which wouldn't be good. And that'll be even a worse time to announce it. So I again, you know, oh my goodness, Red Bull. All I want is Yuki to drive, bro. Just give me Yuki racing. Anyways,